They can interview you, and they can interview you, and they can tell you, this boy's smart, he's got a degree, he's got good appearance, and he's going to be a good employee. They can judge that. They cannot judge how hard you work. And that is God-given. I always did well, for the motivating force for me was fear of failure. Family living in Ennis, and had a lot of expenses with kids and various things, and I had to do well. Well, in commission, I was my #1 guy in my unit. In fact, with my commissions, I made more than my boss. And they didn't like that, because that's not conducive to being a boss when you have to take a cut in pay, you know. So anyway, I did well. So they started cutting my territory. So I'd have less customers to call on. And they'd threaten me. They'd say, well, we want you to take this promotion. I said, I don't want this promotion. And I was their fair-haired boy. They wanted my sales, you know. And they said, well, you understand, don't you? We can take your territory and we can split it in 3s. And it's a third the size it is now. And I said, I understand that. Can I pick my third that I want? You know, because I thought that's what it's going to be. But I realized I wasn't going to make a lot of money forever working there, because they were trying to keep you under what your boss was making, which I was over it. So I started my own company. It was Nationwide Leasing Corporation. And I sold banks, is all I sold. And I started this leasing company. Banks sometimes needed to lease, because if they bought something and put it on the books and pay for it, money is their product. And they're giving away their raw materials product because it's making nothing. They've bought something with it. And they need to loan it to people and make money. So they leased a lot of stuff. So I had a sale to Interstate Bank, of all things, for these machines. And he said, well, I've got to lease it. And I said, okay. And there were these leasing companies that I would use, and you'd send them down there. Well, he called me back down and he said, I'm not going to buy it. What? I was losing this commission, you know. Why are you not going to buy it? He said, I'm not going to pay those damn lease rates. He said, that's 16%. He said, I'm a bank, you know. And so I didn't know what I was going to do. And I had a guy that was Bill McClellan, who later became my partner for about 35 years, that worked for a leasing company. He said, well, let's you and I lease it to him. I said, okay, how are we going to do that? He said, we'll borrow the money somewhere, just charge a markup, and you do that. I said, okay. So I went down there. I had shown him a lease, and he had thrown it back to me. I said, I got that lease worked out for you. I said, I got it at 11%, not 16. He said, okay, that sounds good. I'll buy them. So he went over there to sign the contract, and he said, I said, before I leave, I said, I need to borrow some money from you. I'd like to make a loan. And he says, okay. Shouldn't we finish this first? I said, no, I'd like to talk about it now. And I said, I want to borrow this money from you. And he said, what are you going to lose as collateral? I said, I'm going to use as collateral a lease from a bank that I'm going to assign to you as collateral. The bank is leasing a machine from me. And he looked at me like I was crazy, and he said, what bank is it? I said, it's this bank. He said, say again. He said, you're going to sell me a machine, and you're going to lease it to me, and you're going to borrow the money from me to lease it to me? He said, something doesn't sound right. And they had a bank right across the street that was his competitor. And I said, Cecil was the bank president. I said, Cecil told me you wouldn't do this. He told me to bring it over here and he'd loan me on it. Give me that damn thing. And that's how I started Nationwide Leasing Company, which I served as president of for about 38 years and made big time money. Right after I started Nationwide Leasing Corporation, I started Melton Services Incorporated, which was a company that fixed Burroughs computers and sold used ones. I hired two of the guys that worked at Burroughs with me that were the repair people to work for me as keeping them going. And I started this company, Melton Services, Inc. My middle name is Melton. I hired two people, and we started servicing computers in competition for my employer, Burroughs, who I was selling for. And we made a lot of money. And then I started another leasing company called Branco Leasing Corporation that did small machines and everything. And about that time, my bosses at Burroughs got a little like that. Also, when you sell a computer, you have to change their forms. You know, they have a new form. So I sold forms part-time for Data Business Forms, which was Jimmy Boone's company. And I made, one year as a part-time form salesman, I made $61,000. That was a part-time job. Well, the word got out that I was living high, and to my bosses, and they wanted to know what was going on. And I said, why do you send forms to Data Business Forms? I said, well, they do a good job. Our forms division just screws everything up. And they said, are you making money on that? I said, oh no, that'd be against the rules. I wouldn't do that. And he said, okay. So one day I got my check from Data, and I went home, and I went to get my check, and it wasn't there. And what happened to my check? About that time the phone rang, and it was my boss in Dallas wanted to see me the next morning at 9 o'clock. I had been in the office that afternoon. Something told me where I had lost that check. So I go in there, and he said, you know, we talked about this forms thing. I said, yeah. He said, you said you didn't make money, right? I said, yeah. I'd already had my story, you know. So he pushed that check over there for $637, and he said, what's this? I said, I knew I shouldn't do that, and I had my transmission go out in my car, and I didn't have the money to fix it, and they said, let us do it for you. And I said, I knew it was against the rules, and I shouldn't have done it. So they should have fired me, but they never did. But anyway, but I started those 5 companies. Then I started a credit card processing company that I was president of called FirstNet. Little Dave worked for them, but we were the company that when you had a bicycle shop and you took credit cards, it got the money from Visa and put it in your bank the next day. And I was president of that. We had 54 employees in that. We started a phone processing company that sold time on phone companies. It was United Telnet. I was president of that one. We started the bank at that time. I got together a group in my hometown, and we started First National Bank of Venice. My name's on the plaque out in front of the bank over here. We sold it to Main Bank, and then we sold it to Prosperity. I made a lot of money. And Harold Jones, my friend that I grew up with, was in the real estate business, and we started buying property. And I had 353 apartments. We had 26 rent houses in this town. We had 4 strip centers in various towns, Gilmer around. And I did well, I was blessed. But it all came from working hard and selling, and I did well. And your mother, I'll be honest with you, she was a big help, because when I would go to work, there would be Dave, she, and Allison, and Tim. Yeah. And Tim was probably the only normal one in the group, you know. And she was kind of the straw boss. She would tell me what was going on and let me dole out the punishment if there was any. And then she got married, and Allison got married, Dave got married, and the group dwindled. And of course I had Kelly and Dee Dee, and I raised them from the time they were. The good thing was their daddy was a ne'er-do-well, and he wasn't around, didn't pay child support, didn't do anything like that. So there was nobody to bother Carol and I and her kids. And the same way with me. My ex-wife, last thing she wanted to see was her kids and me. And were bitter towards it, Tim and Dave, about the fact that she left, and Dave especially, when she didn't even ask him to go. And so it was an interesting life. It really was. I can swap stories with anybody. But yeah, that's how I became a single parent with raising 4 children. I did that for 5 years. That's not easy, buddy. That's not easy.